So then I agree with that 100%. So then I want to ask you, if you're in a place where you have received a lot of validation, and you how would you know when you're in a place when you actually are ready to move on from that, let go of some of that, maybe because it's important. It's a phase. I believe it's important to go through the validation piece. But I guess my own story, my own situation is that I didn't actually find the healing, the real healing and changing, transforming in my life, until I stopped seeking for validation. So I believe it's not my place to tell someone that they should stop seeking validation, and that they need to consider, but how do you, but maybe Nathan, as practitioners, how do you help someone to make that transition? Or do you ever make the suggestion to them that?
So there's a difference between seeking validation and being validated, right?
Okay.
And that's an important distinction, right? When we're seeking validation, we're constantly looking for what you're essentially doing is, I need others to approve of me for me to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts to delve into that unhealthy realm. When we can, what everyone else is talking about right here isn't that.
Oh, okay.
It's the need to feel heard, the need to feel understood without judgment, right? And that's such a critical component of healing, as Tony, you were talking about earlier. And I have a blog, and one of the blog posts is entitled "Empathy is Magic." Right? And I truly believe it is, because when we receive empathy and understanding, it is that root level of like, okay, it's okay to be me in all my ugliness and all my trauma and all my whatever. It's okay.
Yeah.
And that's that foundational healing place of, okay, now I can start moving forward, right? To know that I'm okay. And it's remarkable. I can't tell you how many times people are in high distress, and when I can just meet them with empathy and understanding, the distress comes down. And they start to be able to regulate themselves, and then to start to recognize and develop insight and move forward in their recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just
Got
curious about that. Go ahead, James. Maybe you can answer my question.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually hits exactly on one of the key elements of my recovery, which was the practice of self-compassion, which I think is the conduit to being able to provide empathy to others. And it wasn't really until I could forgive myself for all of the things that I had done as a child of trauma, and then also really offer myself compassion for what I had experienced as a little boy, that until that point, I really wasn't able to get past the triggers and the things that would set me off. I had to start with self-compassion, which honestly is just another form of empathy, right?
Yeah,
that was essential.
I really like that, James. And then also the distinction between really being heard, and then also Sherry's talking about when, and the other gentleman, not Tony, but
Nathan,
about being the distinction then being, there is also a point, however, where we can continue to seek validation, maybe because we're not having that within ourselves with the self-compassion, that really allows us to be at a place where we're not being dependent on others for our own recovery.
That's good. So
well,
amen.
What happens is what you're talking about, Sherry, is where you start crossing over and you start giving yourself excuses, like, oh, I would do this, but this happened, so oh, woe's me. It's kind of that woe's me pity party type of thing is where you're delving into there, what you're talking about. And we're talking about in general, what referring to James is, we call it connecting with self. We've got to connect with ourselves. It's all about connection, connecting with others, connecting with self, connecting with God, connecting with, it's all about connection. And once we can connect together, and we no longer are delving into that woe's me attitude, then we can start to really experience the healing. And I give you an example.
Amen. That's good.
is I didn't realize I was doing this when I had somebody who declared bankruptcy on me for $30,000. And that's a lot for a small business owner. And I remember every time I talked with somebody, it was like, yeah, I'd be doing better, but yeah. And I was like, why am I allowing that person to have so much control over me that even though that happened several years ago, it's still controlling me? I'm using it to control whether I'm successful. I'm using it to control my financial state. I was using it as a crutch, and I was milking it. And it wasn't until I thought back, I was like, wow, I'm the one that's at fault here. And that person did what they did, yes, but I'm the one that keeps it and keeps using it as that crutch to give me that excuse of why I'm in such a bad situation.
Yeah.
No,
not victim.
She might have put me in that situation at first, but I'm keeping myself there.
Yeah.
Well, said. Beautiful, Tony. I've got nice. In my blog, my last 5 posts are all about trauma recovery. And
yes, I wanted to.
You're speaking to so many of those points. The blog is it's writingonpurpose.org.
Yeah.
But it's you talk about we've healing or not healing, forgiveness, right? That how can I possibly forgive? And that's both of others and ourselves, right? But another part of it is how do we get out of the victim mindset? Because that, we may be a victim to something, but our mindset is what keeps us there.
Yeah. And
that is the essence of like lingering trauma is how do we decide, who we give our power to? Because so much we give our power to some. We give our power to our abusers, right? I was reading years ago, what's her name? Elizabeth Smart's biography or her autobiography. Right at the end, there's this really powerful statement. She's finally gotten away from her abusers, and her mom has her. And the next morning she wakes up and her mom says to her, they have taken 9 months of your life. Don't give them another second, right? It's that idea of, can Amen. We own our own power? Can we be able to say, all right, I can forgive me. I can forgive them. I can see them as a whole person. And that's not excusing them for their behavior. It's letting go of their power over me and not giving it to them anymore.
Yeah, that's so good. Sorry, thank you. I was going to ask you to speak of this. Yes, thank you.
So I was going to, a couple of great points have come up, and especially in regards to connection, like Tony was saying, and also in regards to forgiveness, because when you're in a space where you're experiencing trauma from an external event, when it comes to connecting and it comes to forgiveness, there's a real difficulty with opening up again to trust, especially if you believe that this is going to come back again and harm you again. Like the whole body doesn't want to open up. You'll go completely into safe mode. And so what James was sharing there about self-love and about self-compassion, this was my gateway. This was the key for me, for my own healing. I could not find it in myself to forgive the experiences that had happened. I was very angry about them, and justifiably valid, that was valid feeling to have concerning those experiences that I've had. However, I was stunted in my growth and I needed to grow. And the only way I was able to actually find understanding, patience, kindness, forgiveness, and truth for the situations that I was experiencing was first to find it in myself. I had to first forgive, love, have that patience, that understanding for myself, the kindness for myself. And only when I learned how to actually do that and feel that in myself and know what love sounded like coming out of my own thoughts and my own words towards myself, how it felt in my body, I was only then able to recognize it when someone was bringing love to me, because it felt just like what I already know in myself. And so I had to go through that process of really identifying what love looks like, what care looks like, what forgiveness, what patience looks like in me, in order to finally sort of open that door and trust that I can allow you in and know if you're bringing love, And if you're not, I can close that off on you without, having it affect me, or keep it open if, that love is being returned.
Oh,
And
what
that
a
was
neat.
the only way that I could find that.
That is so neat.
So
That is
good.
so awesome.
Yeah. So
Can I say something here?
Yes.
This is beautiful, Clary. That's such a beautiful description, and this is so much what we in betrayal trauma recovery we talk about. The antidote to abuse is self-care.
Mm.
And this is exactly what she's talking about. And she's talking about clearing herself first, getting herself aligned with truth in order to be able to handle whatever's coming at her in the world outside of her. So it's so beautifully put. But in betrayal trauma, that's part of what we talk about, is that self-care. It's not polishing your nails. It's all the boundaries, it's all the self-knowledge, it's all the self-compassion, self-love. But polishing your nails might be a part of it. That may be a very real part of it.
Exactly.
But anyway, so I just wanted to make that point. It's such an important point. And I believe it's also where the abuser, or those who are creating the trauma, need to go in order to find their healing, is their own self-care and their own self-love and compassion.
So Sherry, just really quick, there's a comment that somebody said, forgiveness was surprisingly easy and freeing for me, but learning to really be able to genuinely trust someone again has been unbelievably difficult.
Yeah.
Can I address that?
Yes, please.